The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was bigger than most cities on Earth. Thousands of alien creatures filled the massive space, their voices creating a noise that hurt human ears. Some aliens looked like giant lizards with sharp teeth. Others were made of what seemed like living crystal that sparkled in the light. The strangest ones were machines that walked and talked like living beings. Captain Jake Morrison stood at the center of it all. He was a tall man with gray hair and deep lines around his eyes from years of looking at stars. His blue uniform was simple compared to the fancy robes and armor worn by the alien leaders around him. He did not look worried, even though every alien in the room was staring at him. The noise got louder as Ambassador Zekthara stepped forward. The Vorthan looked like a cross between a snake and a dragon, with green scales that shifted color when he moved. His yellow eyes were cold as winter as he spoke into a device that turned his hissing words into human language. "Let me understand this correctly," Zekthara said, his voice coming out of speakers around the room. "The Devourer has eaten 3 entire star systems. Every civilized race in the galaxy has sent their best warships to fight this monster. The Vorthans have sent 200 of our finest battlecruisers. The Ethereals have contributed 50 of their reality-bending crystal ships. Even the small Klaxon people have sent 30 vessels." The alien ambassador paused and looked directly at Jake. "And humanity sends 1 ship?" The room exploded with laughter. It was not pleasant laughter like humans made when something was funny. This was cruel laughter, the kind that came from beings who thought they were much better than you. The lizard-like Vorthans made a sound like steam escaping from a broken pipe. The crystal ethereals created a noise like breaking glass. Even the robot-like Nexus made electronic sounds that their translators said were amusement. Jake waited for the noise to die down. He had been in tough situations before, but never one where an entire galaxy was laughing at him. Still, his voice was steady when he spoke. "The USS Defiance will handle the job," he said simply. This made the aliens laugh. Even harder, a Vorthan general named Kraktal stepped forward, his massive body covered in battle scars. 1 ship against the Devourer? The creature that ate the Zellan Empire in a single day? The monster that turned the bright suns into dark holes in space? An ethereal leader whose name sounded like wind chimes spoke next. "Human, do you not understand what we face? The Devourer is larger than your moon. It feeds on energy itself. When we shoot it with our weapons, it grows stronger." Jake nodded. "We understand the threat. Then you understand that sending 1 ship is the same as sending none at all," Zekthara said. "Perhaps humans are not ready to join the galactic community. Perhaps you should return to your small blue world and leave this fight to those who can actually help." More laughter filled the room. Jake could hear alien voices talking among themselves, not caring that he could understand them through his translator. "How long do you think the human ship will last?" One Vorthan asked another. "I give it 5 minutes after the Devourer notices," it came the reply. "That long? I think it will be gone in 2 minutes. Want to bet on it?" Jake listened to them making bets on how quickly his ship and crew would die. Some aliens thought it would take 5 minutes. Others said 10. A few were generous enough to say it might last a whole hour before being destroyed. A Nexus robot rolled forward on metal wheels. "Captain Morrison, our calculations show that your single vessel has a 0.01% chance of survival against the Devourer. This is essentially 0. Are you certain you wish to proceed?" "We are certain," Jake replied. The robot's lights flashed in what might have been confusion. "This does not compute. Why would you choose certain death?" Before Jake could answer, Zekthara raised a clawed hand for silence. "Enough! If the humans wish to throw away their lives, that is their choice. Captain Morrison, your ship will be assigned to the rear guard. Try to stay out of the way of the real warships." Jake saluted, even though none of the aliens understood the gesture. "Understood, Ambassador." As he turned to leave, he could still hear the alien voices behind him. They were already planning the battle without him, treating his ship like it did not exist. Some were even joking about using the human ship as a distraction while the real fleet attacked. Walking through the corridors of the space station, Jake passed groups of alien warriors. Vorthan soldiers in powered armor looked at him with what might have been pity. Ethereal pilots glowed with soft light as they discussed battle plans. Nexus war machines calculated attack patterns with mechanical precision. None of them paid much attention to the lone human captain walking among them. They had already decided that his ship would be the first to die when the real fighting started. Jake reached his shuttle and climbed inside. As the small craft headed back to his ship, he looked out at the massive alien fleet gathering in space. Hundreds of warships floated in the darkness, each one the size of a city. Their hulls gleamed with energy shields and advanced weapons that could destroy planets. The USS Defiance looked tiny next to them. But Jake was not worried. The aliens had made one big mistake. They thought bigger was always better. They thought more advanced was always superior. They had forgotten that sometimes the old ways worked best. The galaxy had laughed when Earth sent one ship. Soon they would learn why that was enough. The USS Defiance did not look like the other ships in the fleet. Where alien vessels were smooth and curved like works of art, the human ship looked like a flying brick. Its hull was gray metal covered in weapons that stuck out at odd angles. There were no graceful lines or beautiful colors. It was built for one purpose only: to destroy things. Lieutenant Commander Lisa Harper walked through the bridge, checking every system twice. She was a small woman with short brown hair and quick hands that never stopped moving. Her job was to make sure the ship worked perfectly when the fighting started. Behind her, the bridge crew worked at their stations with quiet focus. "All systems show green," she reported to Captain Morrison. "The new power core is running at full capacity. Energy output is 3 times what those alien ships can produce." Chief Engineer Pete Collins climbed up from the engine room, his coveralls covered in grease and his face happy like a child with a new toy. He was a big man with thick arms and a smile that never seemed to leave his face even when things got dangerous. "Captain, you should see what we have down there," Pete said, wiping his hands on a dirty rag. "The reactor is purring like a happy cat. We're putting out more power than anything else in this fleet. Way more." Navigation Officer Amy Rodriguez looked up from her console. She was young, maybe 25, with black hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Her fingers danced over the controls as she plotted their course to the battle zone. "Sir, I have our route ready," she said. "We can be at the fight in 6 hours." Weapons Specialist Kevin Torres sat at the biggest console on the bridge. He was a quiet man who spoke only when he had to, but his eyes lit up when he talked about weapons. Right now, he was checking and double-checking every gun on the ship. "All weapon systems are online," he reported. "Kinetic batteries are loaded and ready. Railguns are charged. We have enough ammunition to level a small moon." Other ships in the fleet used energy shields to protect themselves. They relied on being fast and hard to hit. The human ship was different. It was covered in thick armor plating that could stop almost anything. The idea was simple. If something shot at you, you shot back harder. Communications Officer Danny Kim was a thin man with glasses who looked more like a teacher than a soldier. He sat at his station listening to messages from the alien fleet commanders. Most of the messages were offers to help the small human ship by letting it hide behind the bigger alien vessels. "Captain Admiral Keth Tarr is offering to escort us to a safe position behind his battle line," Danny said. "Tell him we appreciate the offer, but we will handle ourselves," Morrison replied. Danny typed the message and sent it. A few seconds later, his console beeped with the reply. "The Admiral says that human bravery is admirable but foolish. He suggests we stay far from the combat zone. Send him our thanks and tell him we will be fine." Dr. Sandra Walsh worked at a science station covered in screens showing data about their enemy. She was older than most of the crew, with gray streaks in her brown hair and the serious look of someone who had studied dangerous things for many years. Her job was to understand the creature they were going to fight. "Captain, I have been studying. The intelligence reports on the Devourer," she said. "This thing is huge, bigger than most space stations. It seems to eat both matter and energy. Every time someone shoots it, it gets stronger." "What about its weaknesses?" Morrison asked. "That is the problem. Nobody has found any weaknesses. The alien fleets have been fighting creatures like this for thousands of years. They use coordinated energy attacks to overwhelm enemy defenses. It is standard galactic warfare. Morrison nodded. Good thing we do not follow standard galactic warfare. In the cargo bay, Marine Sergeant Tony Rivera watched his men load special ammunition into the ship's weapons. Each round was the size of a small car and heavy enough that it took machines to move them. Tony was a tough man with scars on his hands and a voice that could be heard over a thunderstorm. Be careful with those, he told his squad. Each one of these rounds has enough punch to flatten a city block. We do not want any accidents. Private First Class Bobby Martinez looked at the massive ammunition rounds with wide eyes. Sarge, what exactly are these things? Kinetic penetrators, Tony explained. No explosives, no energy weapons, just solid metal moving really, really fast. When they hit something, they go right through it. Will they work against the Devourer? Tony grinned. Kid, when you hit something hard enough, it does not matter what it is made of. Physics is physics. The alien ships around them were beautiful to look at. Forthon vessels glowed with green energy fields. Ethereal ships looked like flying, diamonds that bent light around them. Nexus warships were perfect metal shapes covered in sensors and computers. But none of them looked ready for a real fight like the USS Defiance did. Engineer Maria Santos worked in the lower decks, making sure power flowed to all the right places. She was small but strong, with calloused hands that showed she was not afraid of hard work. We are ready for anything, she told her team. When the shooting starts, we can push the systems past their limits. Life support, artificial gravity, everything can be turned down to give more power to weapons. The ship's doctor, Carl Thompson, prepared the medical bay for casualties. He was an older man with gentle hands and eyes that had seen too much suffering. He hoped he would not be needed, but he knew better than to count on hope in a battle. As the USS Defiance moved toward the battle zone, the crew worked with the quiet confidence of people who knew their jobs. They did not have the fancy technology of the alien fleets. They did not have energy shields or reality-bending weapons. What they had was something the aliens had forgotten. Sometimes the simplest solution was the best solution. Sometimes you did not need to be clever or advanced. Sometimes you just needed to hit the enemy harder than they could hit you. The galaxy was about to learn that lesson the hard way. The Kalian system looked like a graveyard when the fleet arrived. 3 planets that once held billions of lives were now nothing but floating rocks and dust. The 4th planet was half gone, being slowly eaten by something that should not exist. The Devourer floated in space like a tumor made of nightmares. It was bigger than Earth's moon, with skin that looked like it was made from the darkness between stars. Long tentacles reached out from its body, each one thicker than a city block. Where the tentacles touched things, those things simply stopped being. Not destroyed or broken, but erased as if they had never existed at all. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and watched the monster through the main screen. His crew was silent, staring at something that hurt to look at. The creature pulsed with stolen light from the stars it had eaten, and every pulse made the air itself feel wrong. "My God," whispered Dr. Walsh. "It is even worse than the reports," said. Admiral Kethtar's voice came through the communication system, speaking to all ships in the fleet. "All vessels, this is Admiral Kethtar. We will attack in formation Beta 7. Forthon ships will lead the assault. Ethereal vessels will provide support fire. Nexus ships will coordinate targeting." The Admiral paused, and when he spoke again, his voice had the tone adults used when talking to children. "Human vessel, you will remain at the rear of the formation. Try to stay out of the way." "Acknowledged," Captain Morrison replied calmly. Communications Officer Danny Kim monitored the alien channels as hundreds of warships moved into attack position. The aliens were confident, talking about their battle plans and how they would defeat the monster. They had done this before, fighting similar creatures across the galaxy. "Sir, the alien commanders are very sure of themselves," Danny reported. "They think their combined firepower will overwhelm the Devourer. Let us see how that works out for them," Morrison said. The attack began with a light show that could be seen from other star systems. Hundreds of energy beams lanced out from the alien fleet, each one hot enough to melt steel. Plasma bolts the size of buildings struck the Devourer's hide. Reality-bending weapons from the ethereal ships tried to tear holes in space itself around the creature. For a moment, it looked like the attack was working. The devourer writhed and twisted, its tentacles pulling back from the planets it was eating. A sound came from it that was not quite a scream, not quite a roar, but something that made every person on every ship feel sick to their stomach. Then the monster began to change. The devourer's skin started to glow with the same colors as the weapons hitting it. Where the energy beams struck, the creature's hide became brighter and stronger. It was not being hurt by the attacks. It was feeding on them. "Impossible," gasped an ethereal commander over the radio. "Our weapons are being absorbed." The devourer grew larger as it fed on the energy being poured into it. What had been the size of a moon was now the size of a small planet. Its tentacles stretched out further, reaching toward the ships that were attacking it. What happened next was not a battle. It was a slaughter. The creature's tentacles moved faster than anything that big should be able to move. They reached across space and touched the alien ships. Where they touched, the ships simply stopped existing. Not exploded, not crushed, but completely erased from reality. One moment a Vorthon battlecruiser was there. The next moment there was empty space where it had been. Rachel Murphy, the communications specialist, listened to the alien radio channels as panic took over. "Sir, the aliens are screaming about their ships being deleted. They do not understand what is happening." "I can see what is happening," Morrison said, watching as another wave of tentacles reached out and erased a dozen ethereal vessels. "That thing does not just eat energy. It eats existence itself." The alien fleet commanders started giving orders to retreat. But it was too late. The devourer was awake now and hungry. Its tentacles reached further and further, touching ships that thought they were safe at long range. Each touch meant another vessel, and its crew simply stopped being. Admiral Kethtar's voice was no longer confident. "All ships, emergency retreat, scatter formation. Get away from that thing." Half the alien fleet was gone in the first hour. The survivors fled in panic, their advanced weapons useless against something that treated their attacks as a free meal. The beautiful formation they had started with was now a mess of scattered ships running for their lives. Only the USS Defiance held its position. "Sir," Danny Kim said, his voice shaking slightly, "Admiral Kethtar is ordering us to retreat immediately. He says we will be destroyed if we stay." Morrison watched the devourer turn its attention toward their lone ship. He could feel its hunger like a weight pressing down on his mind. The creature's tentacles began reaching toward them, moving through space like snakes through water. "Tell the Admiral we are just getting started," Morrison said. "Mr. Torres, arm the kinetic penetrators." Kevin Torres's hands moved over his weapons console with practiced speed. "Kinetic systems online, sir. All railguns charged and ready to fire." Dr. Walsh looked up from her science station, her face pale. "Captain, that thing just absorbed enough firepower to destroy a solar system. What makes you think our weapons will work where theirs failed?" Morrison smiled, but it was not a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had been waiting his whole life for this moment. "Because we are not trying to feed it energy, Doctor. We are going to remind it that sometimes the old ways are the best ways." The devourer's tentacles reached closer, and the ship's hull began to vibrate as reality itself started to bend around them. In a few seconds, they would be touched by something that could erase them from existence. "Fire," Morrison ordered. The universe was about to learn that humans had a different way of solving problems. The first kinetic round left the USS Defiance with no flash of light, no beam of energy, no dramatic explosion. It was just a piece of tungsten steel the size of a telephone pole, moving at a speed that made light look slow. The railgun that fired it was simple compared to alien weapons. It used magnets to push metal very, very fast. The round hit the devourer and punched through its skin like a needle through paper. The creature's scream was different this time, not the hungry roar it made when feeding on energy, but a sound of pain and surprise. On alien ships scattered throughout the system, crews stopped running and stared at their sensors. "Direct hit," shouted Kevin Torres, his excitement breaking through his usual calm. "The round went straight through. It cannot absorb kinetic energy the same way it absorbs our power weapons." Captain Morrison nodded. Continue firing, full spread. What happened next was not a battle. It was target practice. The USS Defiance unleashed hell in the form of solid metal moving at impossible speeds. Every few seconds, another kinetic round launched from the ship's railguns. Each round was different from energy weapons in a very important way. There was no energy to absorb, no power to feed on. Just mass times velocity, the most basic force in the universe. The Devourer tried to adapt like it had with the alien weapons, but there was nothing to adapt to. Physics was physics. When something heavy hit you at light speed, it went through you whether you liked it or not. Chief Engineer Pete Collins pushed the ship's systems harder than they were designed to go. His face was red with sweat as he rerouted power from life, support, artificial gravity, even the coffee makers to feed the hungry railguns. "Come on, baby," he whispered to the ship, as if it could hear him. "Give me everything you have got." The weapons cycled faster than their makers thought possible. Where alien ships took minutes to recharge their energy weapons, the human railguns fired again and again without stopping. Engineer Maria Santos worked beside Pete, her hands flying over controls as she kept the power flowing. "Railgun 3 is overheating," she called out. "Let it run hot," Pete replied. "We can fix it later if there is a later." The Devourer thrashed in space like a wounded animal, its tentacles whipping around trying to grab the ship that was hurting it. But helmsman Chris Baker kept the USS Defiance moving in patterns that made no sense to anyone watching. Where alien ships moved in straight lines and graceful curves, the human ship jerked and twisted like a drunk person trying to walk. "It is trying to touch us with those tentacles," Chris said through gritted teeth as he threw the ship into another, impossible turn. But it cannot grab what it cannot predict. The creature's tentacles reached out again and again, each time missing the human ship by inches. The Devourer had learned to fight enemies that moved in logical patterns, that followed rules of space combat. Humans did not follow those rules. They moved like they were crazy, because sometimes crazy worked. Dr. Walsh watched her instruments as the creature's biosigns changed. The thing that had seemed impossible to hurt was now bleeding strange fluids into space. "Captain, its internal structure is falling apart. Whatever this thing is, it has never dealt with pure physical damage before. That is because the rest of the galaxy forgot the most important rule," Morrison replied as another salvo tore through the creature's core. "When you do not know what else to do, hit it with a rock." On the retreating alien ships, crews watched, in shock as the tiny human vessel systematically destroyed something they thought was impossible to kill. Admiral Cathtar stood on his bridge staring at the tactical display, unable to believe what he was seeing. "How?" he whispered. "How are they doing this?" His science officer, a young Vorthon named Seklon, checked his instruments again. "Sir, they are using kinetic weapons only. No energy signatures at all, just solid projectiles moving at extreme velocity." "Kinetic weapons?" Cathtar's voice was full of disbelief. "Those are ancient technology. Primitive. No civilized race has used kinetic weapons for thousands of years. Apparently the humans never got that message, sir. The Devourer was dying. Each kinetic round that hit it tore away chunks of its body that could not be regenerated. It had fed on the energy weapons of the alien fleet and grown stronger, but there was no way to feed on simple physics. When a piece of metal traveling at light speed hit you, you got hurt. Period. Sergeant Tony Rivera watched from the cargo bay as his Marines loaded the last of the special ammunition. "That is it, boys," he called out. "Last magazine. Make them count." The final barrage was the most devastating yet. 12 kinetic rounds launched at the same time, each one aimed at a different part of the creature's body. They hit within seconds of each other, tearing through the Devourer's core like bullets through tissue paper. The creature's death scream could be heard across the entire star system. Then it was silent. The USS Defiance floated alone in space, surrounded by chunks of dead monster and the scattered debris of something that had once eaten star systems. The ship's hull was scorched from near misses, and several of its weapons were melted from overuse, but it was intact. More importantly, it had won. Communications Officer Danny Kim's console lit up with incoming messages from the alien fleet. Every ship commander wanted to know how the humans had done what seemed impossible. "Sir," Danny said, his voice filled with amazement, "everyone wants to talk to us. The aliens are asking how we killed that thing when their most advanced weapons could not even hurt it." Morrison smiled. "Tell them we used the oldest trick in the book. We threw rocks at it." "Rocks, sir?" "Very fast rocks. The USS Defiance had proven something important that day. Sometimes the newest technology was not the best technology. Sometimes the old ways worked better than anyone expected. The galaxy had forgotten that lesson, but humans remembered it. They would not forget. Again. The USS Defiance floated in the silence of space, its hull blackened from the battle but still in one piece. Around the ship, pieces of the dead devourer drifted like islands of dark meat in an ocean of stars. The monster that had eaten entire civilizations was now nothing but floating chunks of organic matter that would feed space bacteria for the next 1,000 years. Captain Morrison stood on the bridge looking at the main screen. His uniform was wrinkled and his face was tired, but his eyes held the satisfaction of a job well done. Around him, his crew worked to shut down overheated weapons and check for damage to their ship. "Damage report," Morrison asked. "Lieutenant, Commander Lisa Harper checked her instruments. Railgun 3 is completely burned out. Railgun 7 has a cracked barrel. Hull plating on decks 5 through 9 needs replacement. But we are spaceworthy, sir." Chief Engineer Pete Collins climbed onto the bridge, his coveralls even dirtier than usual, and a huge grin on his face. "Captain, we pushed those systems, way past their limits. I am amazed we did not blow ourselves up. The reactor ran at 400% capacity for 20 minutes straight. Any permanent damage? Nothing we cannot fix with some time and spare parts. Though I would like to redesign a few things based on what we learned today." Communications Officer Danny Kim looked up from his station, his face showing confusion and wonder. "Sir, I am getting messages from every ship in the fleet. The alien commanders want to know how we did what we just did." Morrison sat down in his captain's chair. "Put Admiral Kethtar through." The main screen changed to show the Vorthan Admiral on his own bridge. The proud alien warrior who had dismissed the humans just hours ago now looked at Morrison with something that might have been respect or maybe fear. "Captain Morrison," Kethtar said, his translator struggling with what sounded like embarrassment. "That was the most impressive display of combat effectiveness I have ever witnessed." "Thank you, Admiral. I must ask, how did your primitive kinetic weapons succeed where our most advanced energy systems failed?" Morrison thought about the question. "Sometimes the old ways work better than the new ways, Admiral. We never forgot that simple solutions are often the best solutions." Kethtar was quiet for a moment. "Perhaps we should discuss human military technology for future cooperation between our peoples." Before Morrison could answer, another voice cut into the conversation. It was Commander Veltar of the ethereal ships, her crystal body glowing with excited energy. "Captain Morrison, the Ethereal Collective, would like to propose a technology exchange. We offer our reality manipulation systems in return for your kinetic weapon designs. The Nexus also wishes to begin immediate talks," added General Unit 7742, his mechanical voice carrying more emotion than Morrison had ever heard from a robot. "Our calculations show that kinetic weapons are 73% more effective against entropy-based life forms than previously computed." Danny Kim looked at his captain with wide eyes. "Sir, I am getting requests from over 50 different alien governments. They all want to talk about trade deals, defense agreements, and technology sharing." Dr. Walsh finished her analysis of the battle and turned to face Morrison. "Captain, what we did today changes everything. These aliens have spent thousands of years developing more and more complex weapons. They forgot that sometimes the simplest answer is the right answer." "It is ironic," she continued. "They learned to bend reality, to manipulate energy at the quantum level, to create weapons that could reshape space itself. But they never thought to just throw something really hard. Navigation Officer Amy Rodriguez plotted their course home, while listening to the alien communications. "Sir, the aliens are already calling this the Battle of Simple Solutions. Some of them are saying it marks the beginning of a new age in galactic warfare." Weapons specialist Kevin Torres was examining the data from their attack. "Captain, our kinetic rounds penetrated that creature's hide like it was not even there. Every single shot was a direct hit with full penetration. I have never seen weapons work so perfectly." Morrison nodded. "That is because we built them to do one job and do it well. No fancy energy fields, no complex targeting systems, just point and shoot." Sergeant Tony Rivera came onto the bridge to report on the Marines' status. "Sir, my boys are already asking when we get to do this again. They want to know if we can get bigger guns for the next monster." "Bigger guns?" "Well, sir, if throwing rocks at light speed works this good, imagine what we could do with rocks the size of asteroids." Morrison almost smiled at that. Trust Marines to want bigger weapons after proving that their current weapons worked perfectly. Engineer Maria Santos joined the conversation from her station. "Captain, I have been thinking about what we learned today. If we redesign our power systems based on today's performance, we could probably increase our firing rate by 50%. "Do it," Morrison ordered. As the USS Defiance prepared to return to Earth, the alien fleets began to disperse, but they were not laughing anymore. Instead, they were sending urgent messages to their home governments about the need to study human technology. The Vorthans wanted to know how to build kinetic weapons. The Ethereals were curious about human engineering methods. The Nexus wanted to understand how humans designed such efficient systems. Even the smaller alien races were sending diplomatic messages to Earth, requesting meetings and trade agreements. Species that had ignored humanity for decades now wanted to be friends. Dr. Carl Thompson, the ship's doctor, had spent the battle preparing for casualties that never came. "Captain, it occurs to me that we just became the most feared military force in the galaxy, without losing a single person." "Fear is not what we want, Doctor," Morrison replied. "Respect is better. I think we got both, sir." As the ship entered hyperspace for the journey home, Morrison thought about what had happened. Earth had sent one ship to face a cosmic horror, and that ship had succeeded where entire fleets had failed. Not because humans were smarter or stronger than the aliens, but because they remembered something the galaxy had forgotten. Sometimes the best solution was the simplest solution. Sometimes you did not need to be clever or advanced or sophisticated. Sometimes you just needed to hit the problem harder than it could hit you back. The galaxy had laughed when humans sent one ship. Now they wanted to learn how to build ships, just like it. Back on Earth, military engineers were already working on new designs based on the lessons learned in battle. Bigger railguns, stronger hulls, more efficient power systems. The next time humanity went to war, they would be ready. The age of human military dominance had begun not with energy weapons or reality manipulation, but with the oldest technology in the universe, throwing rocks. Very, very fast rocks. Very fast.